Hello and welcome to the Wisdom Factory. We've been broadcasting for more than 2 years now, and today we're continuing into our fourth season, which is all about various aspects of aging at any age, meaning that we are all aging. So regardless of how old you are, we appreciate your comments and your feedback from your own life's perspective. And if you're watching from our live streaming page, you can use the chat function on the left, which is on the right over here. And if you watch from our G Plus community or on YouTube, you can write your comments there too. And today, we also invite you for a new feature we're trying out to an after-show chat in our Facebook group, Masterminding Integral Aging. We'll talk more about that.
So stay tuned. Afterwards, go over and we will post the links there in the group, in the Facebook group.
Okay.
The Wisdom Factor is our contribution to the ongoing emergence of the world by bringing together people who have experience, knowledge, and wisdom to share with all of us.
Oh, by the way, you're who?
Oh, yeah, I'm Heidi.
Oh, and I'm Mark. Okay. So please follow.
Follow us on Facebook on G Plus and find all our information on the wisdomfactory.net. And maybe you are already there. You will find also previous series in the archive, in the video archive.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can check out all our guests and their age-related topics there too. And this is our second episode in this weekly sequence of 20. We have 19 guests confirmed, plus we plan a final panel discussion for many of them when we finish the series in April. And today, we're very happy to present Jon Freeman. Say hello, Jon.
Hi, Heidi. Hi, Mark.
And the title is, What About Our Possibilities When We Get Older?
Yeah. Jon is an author, speaker, and organizational mentor with special expertise in the pivotal evolutionary cultural transition we are now in. He's a trainer in spiral dynamics integral and a thought leader in the science of consciousness, and also writes about our relationships with money and with sex, but not today. He has 2 books out, the most recent being Reinventing Capitalism, How We Broke Money and How We Fix It, from inside and out. And today we base our conversation on his other book, The Science of Possibility, Pattern of Related Consciousness.
Connected.
Oh my goodness. I got his name right though.
Okay,
yes,
good.
That's good. So, Jon, oh gosh, a big mouthful of a question here. You can tackle it any way you want. But what has science got to do with possibility? And how might that relate to aging, especially in this very unpredictable century?
Science has everything to do with possibility once you understand what science really has to say about the world, rather than what everybody has been telling you, or practically everybody has been telling you probably for most of your lives, about what science is and what the material world is. And I think in order to give a perspective on how I even got into this journey and started realizing that science wasn't telling us what we needed to know, it goes back a long way. It goes back over 30 years. And I want to tell, I guess, 2 stories, one very quick and one slightly longer, about the beginning of this journey. The first thing that happened was that I went to a course which I thought was about things like stress management. And it turned out to be more than that. And at the end of that training, I was taken through an exercise, everybody was taken through an exercise where we were given the task of detecting what illness somebody that We just had a name and a location and agenda for detecting what illness that they had. And that question led to me having very strong, visceral, intense psychic experience where I felt in the back of my head I didn't exactly feel it. I had the idea of the pain that this named individual was having. And I said, does he have a brain tumor? I have no idea where that came from. But the fact that that was the kind of correct diagnosis completely turned my world upside down, because I'd been brought up a rationalist atheist and I didn't have any belief that such a thing was possible, least of all for me. And that then led me a year or so later, after I'd actually become a trainer for the method, which I had that experience through, I was at another training within that methodology, which was actually about doing, and I'm talking now about the time in the mid-80s when AIDS was becoming a huge thing. Nobody knew what it was, nobody knew how it was working. It was very clear at that point that it was acting through the gay community, but nobody knew why. There were some other people on the training that I was at who were gay and who were really worried because they were losing people they knew. And so they started a group of us to say, well, how can we take this healing process that we're learning into hospitals or wherever that people are potentially ill or even dying with AIDS. So a whole methodology was constructed, and we set it up so that 3 people from the team would go in 3 times each day to visit our first client. The first client at that point was a guy of about 6'2", and he was down to 100 pounds in weight. His family had sent in the priest to deliver the last rites. He hadn't left his bed for some considerable while. As far as we were concerned, he was dying. As far as everybody else was concerned, he was dying. So the first group of people went in during the first week, and at the end of that first week, he was awake and conscious, and he was beginning to participate in the visualizations that were part of his healing. That was the point at which I went in as part of the team for the first time. And at the end of the second week, he started to get up from his bed and go to the bathroom on his own. At the end of the 4th week, he left the hospital, and he'd been tested as apparently free from HIV. And 6 months later, we met him because he came on the training course himself, and he was healthy and well. And you wouldn't know that he'd been ill. At that time, particularly when AIDS was the most devastating, scariest thing you can possibly imagine, that was an absolutely huge thing to be part of. And what it started to tell me was not only was the science that I'd been taught wrong, it was just so limited in what it allowed us to think we are capable of. And it led me to a decades-long journey during which I wrote what eventually became the Science of Possibility, because I had to find a description of science which said, not that science was wrong, because clearly there's a lot that science does that's brilliant, and we're talking through it, and it lands people on the moon, and it does very clever medical things, and yet it misses the whole arena in which that healing was capable of happening. Where did that lead me? It led to the understanding that we have had a completely upside down view of what energy and consciousness are. The reason I use the strapline patterns of connected consciousness is because while we're all pretty much brought up to believe that consciousness is something that our body creates. It's an outcome of us being physical and biological beings. What became clear as I built the whole picture of what science is that actually consciousness and information are what causes matter, energy to structure itself in the way it does in the material world. So information and consciousness are not a result, they're a driver. Okay, so that's a pretty big concept, and it may sound very abstract, but what it means is that a lot of what may have seemed quite woo-woo and that is presented in sort of rather limited ways through a lot of what the New Age has been saying for a long time, there's actually a core of truth in it, which is that we are part of consciousness. We hold some of the information. The fact that we can be psychic means that the information is kind of passing through. There's an input and an output all the time in the non-material realm of our engagement with the universe of information. In that universe of information, we are an active, creative component. One of the things that I sent earlier on a link, which I did too late for it to be up on the page through on my page on Heidi's website, but it will go up there. It's a link to 1.5 minutes of video from the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, who did several years of very, very tight, hard-edged, engineering-oriented research into how human beings can influence material events. And they had setups for random number generators to be influenced by people thinking at them, and by ball bearing things which would distribute in a particular pattern that people could think at that and disrupt the pattern. And you'll see on the video the engineer, who's he's a NASA scientist. This is a very smart, material-oriented guy. He says at the end, the results that we got show psychokinesis to be possible at a level of proof which is better than 1 trillion to 1 against it happening by accident. That's as he says, huge. It's more than the standards of any normal piece of scientific proof. So I want to put those things together. We have the ability to alter the material world. We have a connectedness into and from the material world. We have a relationship with consciousness in which we can be active in influencing what happens. Now, how does that relate to aging? What do you conceive your body to be?
Moment. Can I first intervene? Because you were saying, I will put all the links in his personal page on our thewisdomfactor.net website /Jon Freeman, and you will find tomorrow the timestamps of our conversation today, where we name the main topics which we are talking about, and you can also see the links. I will post them all there. So tomorrow you will have a nice weekend to to engage with all these things.
And I'll be busy writing timestamps.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So go ahead. And,
that's great. Thank you, Heidi. And I mean, you could probably find it because it's also on my my YouTube channel, which only has a couple of things on it. So you've got other ways in. So where I'm leading to with all that is that we have really very little notion at this point of how big is our potential in what we can do from ourselves in activating consciously directed changes in the world, and particularly from the aging point of view in our bodies. So we're accustomed to to a certain way of thinking about aging. You know, we've grown up with a world that assumes that this is what bodies do. They and things will deteriorate and things will change, and we're all part of that mindset. And clearly, you know, it doesn't matter that I've had these ideas for some years and I've been working with them. I'm affected by them too. You know, I haven't ceased to age, as far as I can tell, just because I have these ideas. But I also think that I'm already slowing that process down. My inner experience is that I believe that. But more importantly than that, I think the more of us collectively start to engage with that active field of consciousness and think differently and change the information field in which we all sit, the more we do that, the more we will change the field itself, so that we start to support each other. This isn't something I think that people are going to do on their own as some kind of avatars, even though there may be some people who've kind of given indications they might be capable of that, if you choose to believe that. But the big changes will come when collectively we start to put more of our attention into the active creation of new realities. I mean, how much time do you have to do that? I probably managed to spend, I don't know, half of 1% of my average day being active in that particular mode. I hope that as I change my consciousness in the kind of inner and unconscious realms, I'm actually putting more and better stuff out without having to consciously choose it. And where I would like to live from, where I'm doing that 100% of the time, but I'm not there yet.
This is
anywhere near there. Yeah.
This is very interesting. In the beginning, you showed us an example. You can directly influence something like an illness, but now you say you need. I believe that it is the field is more, more potent. But the question is there a way that everybody of us can do something? You say more than 0.5% every day to engage in these thoughts. What else? What else could we do?
Oh, there's so much ongoing work that I feel I've been doing for a long time, which probably a lot of people are doing in working with their shadow, in clearing out the unconscious stuff, in many people who've done affirmations or hundreds of different techniques that are out there that help us gradually make those inner shifts to where more of our focus and more of our intention is going where we would like it to be, rather than being driven by the programs that we were given by our parents or our teachers or our religions or blah, 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 blah. You all know the usual suspects. And, we each have our own perspective on what you might add into that. Every little bit, in my view, helps, and we don't know at what point a collective action will tip the field or tip a particular event into change. There is that notion out there. I think a lot of people they know about the 100th monkey theory, and lots of us we're inclined to believe it, or we'd like to believe it, but we don't really know how true it is or quite how that works. I just have the perception that aging is one of the things that is subject to that potential shift in the field. And that even if you take the example of the healing that we did with that person with AIDS, and he, before the group broke up for all sorts of reasons, we only worked with half a dozen people, and the other 5 are not, they didn't survive. So I can't tell you why or how that is. I do have a strong suspicion that it has a great deal to do with the engagement of the guy who did survive in his, that he put himself into it. I think the skepticism was so strong in others. I also think that, actually, I more than think, people who saw my little biographical blurb on my page will see the comment that some years ago I was on television talking about physical immortality, and where, you know, I say I was back there, I was talking about that, and I'm not dead yet. Now, one of the things that was really interesting about being part of a process of trying to encourage people that there was a potential for physical immortality was that it wasn't just that people don't believe it, it's more often that we discover how much we don't want to believe it. What are all the things that are actually inhibiting us from our willingness to be fully alive in the here and now? You know, never mind projecting it into whether you want to be alive at the age of 80 or 100 or 150. What are the things that cause us to withdraw our energy from our own lives on a day-to-day basis? Where are the places we suppress ourselves? What I discovered, and you know, we could do this little question, who are watching and listening right now. I want you to imagine that you have in your hand a pill that if you take it, it will give you physical immortality. Will you take it?
I don't know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And notice what it
it's-
brings up for you to ask that question. Notice the thoughts that go through. I'm not making this a right or wrong. I'm just saying this is an opportunity to explore what's our relationship with living, never mind aging. What's our relationship with life and life as itself, and what takes us kind of inexorably towards death because we haven't fully chosen to live.
Yeah. And of course, the threat of immortality is that we'll never get out of this we're in, being the way we are, thinking the way we do, fearing the things we fear. You know, it's really frightening. And in many people's lives, I'm sure they would just absolutely dread the thought of continuing it longer than they had to. Yeah. So.
Depends.
Yeah.
If you are really good and you know, active and everything, like this kitty here,
Yeah.
then you might want to live a long time. But when I think in the past, I got to know some people who were old and wanted to die and couldn't. You know, so I don't think it's a question you can really answer at this point. I can't.
Yeah.
No, and I understand that, and I'm not. It's more a kind of an exercise in looking at, okay, where am I with this, and what are my perceptions of life? Because if you're looking at the science of possibility, and you know, fundamentally, what I'm saying through the scientific perspective is there aren't any known limitations to what we might change. Okay, so if you start to look from the perspective of, if I could change anything, what more would I change? If I knew I could change everything, given time, would I shift how I look at this process of living, and would I put more of my attention towards that than I already do? You know, a lot of options come into the frame, which they might affect ultimately whether you die, but it more affects how do I live while I'm alive, and what do I conceive as possible for me as a body which may still be getting older.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of what people talk about is it's not about increasing lifespan, it's about increasing health span.
We have here a comment from Michael Cabot, and he says, if this is merely one of the stops on a long existence, they will mortality enhance the journey? Then probably it means. Can you read that?
He's made a mistake.
If this is merely one of the stops on a long existence, then will immortality enhance the journey?
Yeah.
This, I think, is the question.
Okay, so one possible interpretation of that question is that that the information field contains the notion that the person who inhabits this body previously created and inhabited other bodies, and that yes, there's a continuum, and I can come back again and again and as somebody different, and that's an option. I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. My personal experience and belief system is yes, I've had many past lives, and that I do have a continuity in the information field, and that there's more to that than, you know, I'm not talking about 1%, I'm talking about 0.0000001% of what I know about that. It's an option. But even if you want to have the choice that at some point I will say, okay, I think I've done this life, I've had enough of this one, and I'm going to move on. What would be the difference in doing that in total health, consciousness, choicefulness, saying, yeah, okay, that was really good, I enjoyed that one, nice ride, I'm going to go get on another ride. Possibility is not about you must do this, it's about what can you do.
Yeah, this is fine.
I had the notion of, oh, it's sort of like declaring bankruptcy, just stop it and start all over again from scratch.
That would mean that we know that it is another start possibility. Yeah. I want to come back a little bit to this aging thing and to change our ideas about aging. What I see, not only regarding aging, but we are so in procrastination, we're so opposed to change, you know, because change makes fear. So when we have thought, when we get old, it will be blah, 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 blah. With 80, I cannot change my mind anymore, things like that, you know. It's a certain stability. It gives a certain way that you can predict your future, instead of now being asked to change and to have a different future. So what I want to bring is this human refusal of change. What do you say about that?
There's no doubt that that is what a lot of people experience. And I think there are places where that's true of me too, though I try not to be in that. I try to live in possibility. I try to live in the openness of what else is possible on a fairly continuous basis. There's a shift out of the fear mindset altogether. In every aspect of living. I mean, there isn't any part of our lives which isn't affected by that kind of fundamental fact that we grow up. We're taught to fear because fear is actually necessary. If you're going to cross the road, it's quite useful that you have the notion that it's to be afraid of the bus. And that you don't want to step in front of it. So we do come up with that sort of underlying thread of existence is fragile. And it is, but there's another side to the kind of, both to the notion that maybe we're consciousness that continually creates other bodies and comes and has new experiences, which is that we wouldn't be quite so worried, quite so fearful of dying, and it therefore wouldn't so constrict our living. There's something that Woody Allen said that's just popped into my head, where he said, it's not that I'm afraid of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Yes, please.
Actually, I want to be there when it happens. I want to be conscious.
Yeah, of course.
Well, me too, and that too is a choice. But again, I think he probably speaks for the majority of kind of, well, that's this kind of slightly strange, and yeah, you know, being alive can hurt. You know, you fall over and you graze your knee as a 4-year-old, you discover something about what running too fast does for you, and you're either the kind of person who doesn't care and who gets up and runs even faster and ends up as a Usain Bolt, or you're not. You're somebody who is constricted by that experience and becomes more careful. We have choices all the way along. I mean, I remember having thought after Usain Bolt won his last set of gold medals, whether he had a mother who never said to him, "Don't run so fast, you'll hurt yourself." You know, we carry this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's all a choice ultimately.
And I'm intrigued also by the fact that this is not simply just conditioning. It's not simply what we've learned we can do or not do. It's an interaction with an actual physical body that has its own structures, its own forms. We have telomeres on the end of our chromosomes that wear out, and supposedly that is, you know, a factor in physical aging. You know, so how far can we go? Can we think our way out of telomeres, for example? You know?
Well, of course, I don't know any better than anybody else does. I have the perception that, you know, we could learn a huge amount more about how to maintain our bodies so that they're less inclined to degrade. Mm-hmm. I have ultimately the thought that since the body is a product of information consciousness, that it's perfectly possible that we could have enough access to the wisdom of consciousness that we can change ourselves, that we could reset them to their original DNA, that we would know how to energetically access the root of the information that's with which we originally created these forms, so that we would replenish them. I mean, there are other creatures in the world that do this. You know, that if the starfish, that if they lose a limb, they will recreate that. It's not beyond what is known to be scientifically possible. It's just beyond what we think is within our own capacities.
How do we do that? Yeah, I'm wondering. We have, when we're talking about integral theory, there are the right quadrants from outside and the inner quadrants. We were mainly now talking about, let's say, the inner quadrants, about our consciousness, about the group field which we can create, which I personally find, which is so unexplored, and I think there's a huge potential in what we can do together. I'm really a fan of creating groups and do something together. And I hope it will go on. But we had before science that you can become immortal by eating, I don't know, drugs, by doing things also. What is your take on that? How would you combine this? Is there a way to combine this in your ideas?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I haven't spoken of, because in the way I've presented this, I've kind of given the impression that this is all happening kind of up here in the mind. Actually, it isn't. You know, the body is mind all over. The body has a huge amount of intelligence that we never speak with, never ask what it has to say to us. We don't, we choose our foods according to what our heads think we should eat, rather than actually asking our body, what would you like? There's a whole mindset around our relationship with this form. You know, there's 40 or 50 trillion cells here, coordinated, relating to each other, and each of us has that ongoing miracle. We're accustomed to thinking that this little kind of squidgy couple of kilograms of matter up here is actually driving the whole thing. I mean, a lot of what I talk about in the book is about there are so many different mechanisms. One of the things that I really dislike about people who talk about health is the notion that there's this food, and this food is going to totally transform everything that you are and everything you do, and it will cure everything. You know, there are so many different layers. How I maintain my body, how I have done over the last decades, I have regular acupuncture 6 times a year, or no, more than that, every 6 weeks. I have quarterly chiropractic, so that I maintain, at least to some extent, my kind of structural integrity. I use homeopathy as a treatment methodology because that can get in at all sorts of levels. I get occasional shiatsus very delightfully from my partner. That's also a blessing. I use access consciousness and the bars as a means of clearing out all sorts of energy stuff. The access bars is something I totally recommend to people to look up. It comes with a lot of very interesting and what might look wacky things attached, most of which, the more I look at them, the more true they seem to be to me, and they have some wonderful body process stuff that I haven't even had the time to explore. All of these different things, there are so many layers: exercise, diet, breathing, yoga. I mean, you know, we all know these things are out there. We just don't kind of, in the midst of ongoing life, it's difficult to find the time to do all of those things, and I don't think we need to do all of them all of the time. I think if we ask our bodies, if we get in touch with the wisdom of the body, we would actually know what we need to do, and we choose the right thing at the right time.
I think this is the key word, to get in touch with the body, because during the time of my life, before I was completely disconnected from my body. Then when I was about 27, I began with something which is called breath therapy, where you move your body very slowly. Maybe something like Tai Chi or thing, but it was different. It was a German way. And I became slowly aware of the body. And it is an ongoing process, you know. Now I feel certain vibrations and heat experiences and stuff, which maybe they were there before, but I pressed them away, you know. So we need also the encouragement, and that's why I'm grateful for you to say that these things are normal, that you can feel your body, that you're allowed to feel your body, and it might not always feel so exciting, because sometimes you feel it's hurting here, it's hurting here, it's hurting, and we want to go away of all these things, you know, or it makes fear. When the first time I felt the vibrations in my body, I thought, oh, I'm ill, there's something that's not working, you know. So that the message goes out that feeling your body is all right, and, you know, the more you feel it, the less fear is there, because you get aware of what is going on. And it's an ongoing process. To food, I'm not yet so far that I can really say that my body is it like chocolate, or is it me which likes chocolate?
Which part of me is saying yes to chocolate? But it's like,
well, there's a choice. There is a choice about when. You know, I ask I like chocolate, you know, absolutely. But I also have a choice of asking my body, okay, is now a good time?
mm-hmm.
And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I see it afterwards when I say, oh, this was not so good now.
Well, we had a Thanksgiving dinner yesterday, and about 4 a.m. I realized that things weren't quite as well. Some things I'm so thankful for at that moment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And there's a point you made, Heidi, there about how we react to pain. It's like we don't treat it as information. We don't treat it as a kind of a blessing that our body is talking to us and telling us something and giving us information about what we might need to change because this actually isn't supporting us. So, you know, and you can take that, as most Western medicine does, into the point where we think painkillers are a really good idea. Well, you know, I take aspirin sometimes. Sometimes an aspirin is helpful when I've got a headache. But I don't do that blindly and without recognizing that, well, what else could I be doing that would help me with this headache? I'm not here. You've lost your mic in doing that, I think. Heidi, I can't.
I was excuse me. I was saying that I normally press the finger where the spine goes into the head, because this is normally the point where the flux is interrupted. And I do it a while, and then I also concentrate on the headache. And I think I haven't taken any aspirin for 15 years or 20 years. So I don't, if there is not really something really big like a toothache with, you know, which is exploding, I would never take.
Well, and that's a great approach, and you know, it's the same. I mean, I've pressed all sorts of places on my body to try and interrupt the headache. There's a certain pattern which is, and actually it has been telling me something. It tends to come up when I push myself in whatever area. It can be different areas. If I push myself beyond a certain point, my body says, "Stop that." And so,
well, we've got 20 minutes to go, so it can't say stop it now.
Well, it isn't now, and I'm quite happy now, so that's fine.
Good. It's really an exciting thing to after all these decades to actually get in touch with the body and learn about it. And it's such a familiar thing, but it's got levels, layers, information, feelings, the things that go through my fingers, you know, that I never noticed, never paid attention to before. It's amazing.
I want to add two things. One is that we are grown in a culture which has negated the body, and that now we have, by age, because we are old, but also the setting of our time where we are now, we are allowed to consider our body. And I think
a gift of aging.
This is also a gift of aging, because what I feel getting older, I don't have to lose anything anymore. So I can I can risk, you know, I can even risk to have strange feelings without thinking, oh, now I have to go into the hospital because there's something wrong. And I can just concentrate on, oh, what is going on here, you know, and feel it. And normally it goes away, normally, you know. Maybe a heart attack wouldn't go away, but I haven't experienced that yet. So
we haven't had to ask yet.
No. Hopefully you won't.
Yes.
I think the thing is, you know, our denial of the body and is is part of a bigger picture, which is our denial of our relationship with the physicality of creation. You know, there's a lot that you can blame religion for, as well as science, in that it's pushed our notion of kind of blessedness up here into the realm of something which is in our relationship with God, and it's pulled us away from what kind of before the major religions was absolutely essential to most people living on their earth, which was their direct relationship with nature and the natural world. And if you look at the shamanistic cultures, that relationship was both kind of physical, their ability to manage their environment in all sorts of very sensitive ways, but it was also part of what I talked about right at the beginning in the notion of being psychic, of being connected into the field of information. They had the ability, certainly the shamans have the ability, to be very directly connected, sharing the experience of the natural world. And that can work at every level. I hope my partner will forgive me for telling this story. She was on a trip. She was in London, and she met somebody with a Labrador dog, who she's obviously very fond of and very pleased of. And she said, "How old do you think she is?" And Sophia asked the dog. And the dog said 15, and so she said 15, and the woman said, "How do you know that? How did you know that?" It was outrageous. This is a capacity that we all have. You know, when I told the story at the beginning about being psychic, being intuitive, the thing that really struck me was not only about my own experience with that, but that 9 out of 10 people on the training that I was at had similar experiences, some less intense, some more intense, or whatever. Everybody has this capacity. So how many of the people on this call know that for themselves? How many are engaged actively with that? What difference would it make to your life if you actively engaged with that? You know, we're possibly used to seeing the ones who are gifted. You know, we see the people who are, I don't know, the Paganinis of the violin or whatever, who look like the gifted people, the gifted psychics, doing something that we can't. But actually, every one of us has this within us, if we choose to open it up, if we choose to exploit it, explore it, and yeah, if we do our violin practice, if you like. Now, I'm not gifted, but this is something I know quite clearly. But I do get better. I have got better in the 30 years since I had that first experience.
I do believe that.
So much of this is yeah.
In every discipline, even if you are not gifted, you can arrive with training to a very high level.
And we have time to do that.
No?
This is one of the themes of our series, is that we have a whole chunk of life that our fathers and grandfathers and grandparents didn't necessarily have. You know, I expect to live another 25 years or so. Why not? You know,
He's married?
yeah, my mom did. Hey, my dad did not. No. Yeah, so, but I got past that hurdle. But anyway, we can do this. We have the time to come to understand ourselves in ways that earlier generations, at least in the modern age, did not have time to do. You know, they did not have the training, the ability, the expectation. They expected to be dead by 70.
Maximum.
You know? And so this old age business was just not part of the game. And this is something that I'm only able to do because I got this far.
Yeah.
I could have started earlier, but that's not the way life works, you know? So that's why we call our series conscious aging, you know? Not something that just simply happens to you, but something that you participate in, that you help create, that you interact with others, with the world, with the systems of the world.
And also with the factors, which are collateral, how do you say, which you meet, as you said before, with if we want to live so long, or if not. Because unconsciously we might sabotage our idea that we really want to live long.
Yes,
and so now we have the time to check that out and the possibilities. I mean, what we have learned in the last 50, 60 years about psychology and spirituality, this is just amazing. Wow. I would like, we have still a little bit of time, like to ask you about this field thing. Can you explain this a little bit better and what your ideas are to create this or co-create this, or how we can do that?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, the universe has been around for a long time. And there's a huge amount of information that has all accumulated and built, and it has in its it has in its memory of this is what works, this is what's sustainable. You know, when it created the first electron, it had probably tried a billion different ways of putting energy together, none of which produced a sustainable electron. Well, if you expand that sense that what's in the field, what's remembered in the field, is everything which has somehow gains a certain amount of sustainability. So, although I'm talking about something which is hugely potent and sounds very radical and like we can do all these things, we also sit in a context which says we've got to flow with what already is. And so it's about recognizing not only that we have choice of what we create, but also that we have to have an awareness of what is, what the flow is, and find our way to harmonize and be in tune with that. It's a little bit like, you know, there's the very old religious expression, not my will, but thine, O Lord, be done. Well, we have to have some, this strange paradoxical mix of humility and unlimited sense of possibility, and work within that frame, and that we each have choice, and that it's about what I do and what you do and what you do, and you know, that there's no prescription that we're all going to agree that this is the way we, or everybody has to do yoga, or I mean, it doesn't work like that. This is a realm of what's my possibility? What do I wish to create? What do I wish to put into this field of chaos and fertility, and see what ripples I can create in the unfolding stream of consciousness?
Yeah, and I have now a diabolic question.
What, worse?
Yeah, no, it's on the other quadrant. Many people think they can do the possibility to do everything what they want. Scientists, what I see, what is going on, what they are exploring in CERN, and you know, trying to recreate the Big Bang and stuff like this. And I have the strong impression that not everything should be done as long as we don't know the consequences. And only because it's possible shall we do and risk that we blow up the earth? you know. So this is the question of possibility, what is doable, and possibility on our side, what we are talking about, the internal possibilities. What would you say to this limited possibility of technology?
Well, you know, life has a fairly consistent ability to teach us about hubris if we misuse science, and it happens all the time. I mean, I'm not particularly fearful around what CERN can do, but I think your general question of, you know, do scientists go ahead without enough awareness of the whole system when they tweak a little piece of it? Absolutely. I mean, that you know, that's what got us into all sorts of part of the messes that we're in now, is our inability to understand the danger of the law of unintended consequences. And I mean, yeah, how many scientific theories that were true 50 years ago are still true?
Well, some.
Yeah, and how much is
but not all.
No.
And how much is an ethical is ethic a part of it, and the consequence, the thinking in a bigger picture. What I'm doing now, who is paying the bill? You know, that's what I'm at the moment very much preoccupied about it. So.
Yeah, so that to me comes into the place, to some extent, yes, it's about rational choices, but it's also about field awareness. Actually, if we used our intuition and our sensitivity and the wisdom of our connection with the trees or the polar bears or whatever, if we were engaged with that, how much more sensitive would we be to the idea that actually this isn't a good idea, and this is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We ask the wrong questions in the wrong places.
Yeah, and what can we do now to ask the better ones and to get people to ask better ones?
Right, and I think we need to throw into that context, you know, the events of recent months. It has changed our world, the way we look at things. It's changed our immediate future. You with Brexit, us with Trump, you know. Whoa, are these things that we just assume would go marching along, galump, maybe incrementally, you know, changing in time, and then these big changes come about, and how do we relate to them? That's a big job in our psyches. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do we use our wider awareness and not just our thinking systems to do that? How do we engage with what is Trump, not just as a politician or whatever is sitting in the narrow frame of reference of that, but, you know, what is this saying about the system? Is the system telling us that it actually wants to break apart because there's no space for creativity in the way that it's been before, and it's going to have to fall apart if we want to create something better? You know, these are just possibilities. I don't know, you know, you can tune and get your awareness and everybody else can get theirs. Mm-hmm. That is actually that is my sense of it. You know, I think there's all sorts of scary things there, but I also think we may have to be willing to go through that, because that's the living process. And we get so focused on certain narrow pieces of it. We don't, like the scientists, we don't see, we don't feel, we don't embrace, have awareness of the whole system.
Thank you. And I think this is a good ending point.
Yeah.
We need to
become more, because I agree with him.
Yes. We need to have more awareness of the wholeness of the whole system, of everything which is coming together, no? The whole field of everything. So I would say that thank you very much, Jon. It was a nice conversation. I love it. And to thank our viewers, we had quite a bunch of them, and invite you to come over and come into the room, but not in this one. I will put a link into the chat here, and also go over into Masterminding Integral Aging Facebook group, and we will post the links there too. And you might, even if you're not part of the group, I think you can see the video and might even, there will be 2 links, one for only viewing and the other one that will be probably a green with 2 quotation marks. And when you click on that one, I hope it works still. Yeah. Then you should come into the hangout room and can talk with us and whoever is there, and we can have a discussion about that. Okay?
So their first step is to go to the Facebook group Masterminding Integral.
Yeah. And when they wait here in the chat room, I will post the link just when we have finished here the podcast. Okay? Right. So wait about 5-10 minutes and we will be there.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. And next week, join us next week. We will have Monika Früwert. She is from Austria, and she has is one of the founders of the German integral movement. And she will talk about integral life practice and how it was for her life to be in touch with this knowledge. Okay, so signing off, and we see you over there. Bye-bye.
Okay.